Namaste Saraswati Kauravani Pachadi Nirvishesha Sunyana Prachacha Chatari. Excusez-moi, j'ai un peu la voix cassée. J'ai fait le jeûne des Kadashi avant-hier et quand je jeûne, après j'ai un peu la voix cassée. Donc je suis content de vous voir. C'est toujours merveilleux de voir les chercheurs de vérité. C'est tellement rare, les gens qui cherchent la vérité. Mais pour chercher la vérité,
But to find the truth, we must be freed from sectarianism, from fanaticism. It's very important. For example, Krishna, it is designated in the Vedic scriptures, like Krishna Bhagavan Svayam, the original Lord. In the Vedic scriptures were compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam. He is the commentator on the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra is the conclusion of the Vedas, and the commentary of the Vedanta Sutra is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, in this commentary, he describes Krishna as the absolute truth, as the origin of all living beings, with all his other incarnations. It's not what we say, it's not fanaticism, it's what the Vedic scriptures conclude. But Krishna is full of different aspects, because as the Lord, he manifests himself in different ways, according how the living beings worship him. And in this verse, he explains that he is in the heart of every living entity as the super soul. And he takes the form that the person worship him. He takes that form in which the person worship him. So we should never think that those who have a particular faith do not have a realization, do not have a vision of the Lord. Because the Lord manifests himself in such a way that a person obtains the strength and the faith and the fruit of what is worship towards the Lord is giving him. That's why in the Vedas, we don't accept all the paths come to the different goal, because there's different practices. For example, it is explained according to the demigods. There are 14 planetary systems, and the planetary systems who are superior are what we call the heavenly planets, where the living beings who accomplish pious activities on this planet obtain a particular body in which they can enjoy very refined material pleasure. Because on these planets, it is not matter like on the earth. On the earth, there's a little bit of happiness and suffering. It's mitigated. It's not only happiness, but on heavenly planets, there's only happiness, because the body is specially disposed for material pleasure, enjoyment. So, what we learn is that this destination is temporary. We only stay as much as we accumulated pious credits. It's just like bank placement. You place money in the bank, and then when there's just a little bit of money, then when you just have a little bit of credit, you leave that platform and you take human birth again. So the earth is important because we have to understand that it is an intermediary planet. As such, it is just like, how can we call this? Just like a platform, like a place where we can degrade ourselves or we can progress. So we can elevate ourselves or we can degrade ourselves. So that's why there exist also inferior planets where we can suffer also. That means when we accomplish activities that are wrong, we can obtain a body where we will suffer even more than on Earth, planet Earth. So, but the body is adapted. On the heavenly planets, we just stay one moment, And the inferior planets, time is the opposite. It looks very long. It's not an eternal punishment, but the time feels long. So what happens? The soul is antimatter. It cannot suffer or have material happiness. It's just like the soul is in a state of dream. So there's the subtle body that changes according to their different lives, and then we receive the influence of the material energy, the three modes of nature, plus time, and all these different impressions from previous lives are present. That's why we all have different tastes, different consciousness, different intelligence, different ways, things we can understand, accept or not. That's why we can remember sometimes from our previous lives. And so, this material life, the soul, lives just like a dream. That means a dream. For example, I was dreaming that I was in Vrindavan. This morning I was tired. I was resting for 15 minutes and I was dreaming I was in Vrindavan with a devotee that is called Indradumna Swami. It was a very beautiful dream, very ecstatic. These are dreams that can be compared to beautiful dreams. And sometimes we can dream of a weird animal with big fangs and big eyes, and this is a bad dream, a nightmare. But when we get out of the dream, what's happening? We find a reality with our gross body, and somehow, again, we live on that platform of consciousness. So, external life is compared to just a dream, and everyday life is just like a dream. When we leave a body, we just take another body. It's just like another dream, but our reality is on another platform. It is eternal. It is in a divine relationship with the Supreme Lord. But as long as we have not received this realization, we are in a state of dreaming. Although we go to the heavenly planets and we enjoy, or we go to the inferior planets and we suffer, or we stay in between and on planet Earth, it's still a dream. The difference is that when we do nightmares, we have a negative impression that comes in us. I don't know if certain persons had some following of nightmares, but some people, they are even afraid to sleep because of nightmares. Some people, they know they will be taken by a terrible nightmare and they suffer and they don't want to sleep. They force themselves not to dream. And as soon as they dream, it comes back again. It's just like a nightmare. Many people experience this. You understand? So, there are places where we suffer, places where we enjoy. So these impressions, what I wanted to say, these impressions of suffering, at some point they stay. And what's happening? We will want to get out definitely from this state of dream. When the living being created some pious activity and is suffering, what's happening? There's a phenomenon that happens. It is fate. We call it in Sanskrit Shraddha, that will awake and that will make a person to pray, the need to pray and to find shelter. No matter who that person is, no matter what we're looking for, we'll knock at every door in different religions because we're looking for that shelter. We have that faith. You understand? And automatically, we will engage ourselves in a path. We will accept it if this path is liberating us. This is the phenomenon of spirituality. Somehow at the beginning, most people, they are looking. They're looking because they're suffering. Maybe it's better you find some rest, because otherwise it's disturbing. But the point is, when we suffer, we're searching for liberation. And when a path is liberating us, we accept it as something good for us, as something extraordinary. And we think everyone else must accept it. It's the only way to get out of suffering. You understand? Especially if we tried all kinds of paths that did not give us the same result of liberation. And then we can develop some kind of fanaticism. You understand? Because we think, the others are bad. But their path is giving them good also. They have their experience of it. But
parmi tous ces êtres,
amongst all these living
il y en
beings,
a qui,
there are
dans le vieux
certain
passé,
from their previous lives
n'acceptent pas une voie
who do not
spirituelle
accept
simplement parce qu'ils souffrent.
a spiritual path simply because they're suffering, but because they're seeing something superior.
Et lorsqu'on voit quelque
And
chose de
when we find
supérieur,
something
on
superior,
peut comprendre
we
ce
can
principe
understand this
que le
principle
Seigneur est dans le cœur.
that the Lord is in the
C'est-à-dire
heart.
que dans le
That
verset,
means
les
that
personnes ne peuvent pas
in this
vraiment
verse,
comprendre qu'est-ce qui se
people
passe.
cannot really understand what's happening.
Ils ne peuvent pas comprendre ce
They cannot
principe
understand this
universel
universal
que c'est ce
principle,
même Seigneur
that
qui
it is the
réciproque.
same Lord who reciprocates.
Dans
Because
ce plan
in this
d'action
platform
altruiste,
of fruitive
l'être vivant a
activity,
une
the
conception
living being
corporelle
has a
de
material
l'existence.
conception,
Selon
bodily
leur
conception of existence. And
avec
according to the
vraiment
path that they take,
l'objet qui va réciproquer, c'est
they
son objet
they
d'adoration. C'est
they
pour ça
want
que
that
c'est lui
object they
que le Seigneur
reciprocate with to be the
comprend.
object of worship. That's why the
Mais
Lord is
sur
taking
un
that
plan
form.
plus
But on a more
élevé,
elevated plane of
lorsqu'on
existence,
est
when we are
libéré de la
liberated
conception
from the
corporelle
conception,
de
the
l'existence,
bodily conception of
et
life,
d'adorer en fait une vérité pour un
and
bien
and
matériel,
of
c'est-à-dire
worshiping a
sortir de la
truth, a certain
souffrance pour
truth,
obtenir
to
le
get
bonheur.
material gain, that means to get out
Et
of
à ce
suffering and
moment-là,
find
on peut
happiness,
entrer dans une
then
phase
we can enter in
où
a phase
on peut avoir une
where
certaine
we can have a
appréhension de
certain
l'âme
realization of the
et
soul,
aussi
and also
de cette conception
of this
où le
conception,
Seigneur, en tant que
where the Lord,
Paramatma,
as Paramatma, the super soul,
accompagne tous les êtres et donne
accompanies
le
all
fruit de
living
leurs
beings
actes.
and gives
À
them the
partir de
fruit
là,
of
on
their
peut
actions.
comprendre
And then from there
qu'il y
we
a
can understand that
une
there is
personnalité,
a
une
personality,
substance qui
a
soutient toute
substance
chose dans l'univers.
that sustains everything in the universe.
On devient ce qu'on
We
appelle un
we
gyani.
become what we call a
Un
gyani.
gyani, c'est
A
quelqu'un
gyani is someone
qui perçoit autre chose
who perceives
de la
something
nature du corps
different from the nature of the body
et de l'action intéressée.
and fruitive activity.
Accepter la spiritualité
To
simplement
accept
pour son bien.
spirituality simply
Il
for our
désire à ce
happiness.
moment-là se libérer
He desires to
de cette
liberate
illusion,
himself from this illusion,
de se libérer du
to
cycle
liberate
de la
himself from the
reproduction.
cycle of
C'est-à-dire
birth
que
and death.
si je fais des
That
actes
means if I commit pious activity, I go up. If I do sinful activities, I go down. If I do normal, I stay in this earth. But we want to, someone wants to get out of this cycle because he understands he is in a prison, in a conditioned
mais il ne
prison.
connaît toujours pas sa nature.
But still, the soul does not
Qui suis-je?
understand fully his nature. Who am I?
Qui véritablement
Who
derrière?
truly
Il
is
connaît
behind
que ce
everything?
principe
They only know this,
cyclique de
this
l'univers,
cyclic principle of the universe,
pas plus.
no
Il
more.
comprend aussi qu'il y a des demi-dieux,
They
des
understand that
personnes
there are
très
demigods,
exaltées sur
very
différentes
exalted
planètes,
personalities on
mais
different
ça ne l'intéresse
planets,
pas de les adorer parce
but
qu'il ne peut
he
pas
does not
atteindre
want to
ce
worship them
plan
because he does not want to attain that
univers
a higher plane of
qui
existence
en
in
fait
this
le
universe.
désir
So he
se libérer
desires to free
du
himself
cycle de l'univers.
from
C'est ce
the
que les
universal
bouddhistes veulent,
cycle. That's what the Buddhists
c'est ce
want.
que les mayavadis
That's
veulent,
what the Mayavadis want.
les brahmavadis.
The Brahmavadis,
La plupart des
most
spiritualistes se sont séparés.
spiritualists are on this platform.
Mais
But
il y a un autre plan
there's another platform,
qui est
which is
le plan de la dévotion.
the platform of
On
devotion.
appelle ce plan
We call that plane of existence
Saranagati,
Saranagati,
le plan du don de soi.
the plane of the platform of
Comprendre que notre
giving
nature
ourselves fully. To understand that our nature exists not for ourselves, but it exists for Him, and He exists for us. From there, there's an understanding, a higher understanding, where we understand that we also have an eternal identity. Before, on the plane of Gyan, platform of Gyan, the Gyani, he does an introspection on the fact that matter is temporary and everything that is connected to matter is a source of suffering, a cause of suffering. So the form, the qualities and the activities are rejected. But the Vedas explain something that is interesting. It is that on the transcendental platform, the name, the form, the qualities, and the activities exist, but on a spiritual platform. But the Gyani does not have any consciousness of it. That's why he desires, somehow, to destroy his entity, his identity. But it's not possible, because the soul, it cannot be destroyed. And the soul cannot be destroyed. It cannot be touched,
brûlé, coupé,
burned, cut,
dissous. Elle
dissolved.
est éternelle.
It is
La terre
eternal.
n'était pas créée. Elle est faite comme le Seigneur. Elle n'a jamais eu de début.
It is just like the Lord. There was never any beginning nor any end. It is something that is inconceivable. We cannot destroy it. It is impossible. Even the greatest mystics, Gyanis, who realized the impersonal Brahman, they came back from it. I take the example always. This is something I never heard about this before. You you take a drop of water, you put it in a glass of water, you won't be able to find it again. If they will not be this, if they will not be able to, if they could dissolve themselves, they will not be able to go back to the same experience from before. If you dissolve, then you do not exist anymore. And even these greatest mystics, they always came back from their samadhi, from their absorption. I had that experience. How is it they dissolve in Brahman, but they come back in an identity? I always felt like, in the past I had this experience when I was in fusion with the Brahman. It was so intense that I was exploding of joy. But I was always coming back to my individuality. It's interesting, no? Why? Because we cannot destroy the soul. So this is a conception. But in bhakti, in devotion, by spiritual practice, we can liberate ourselves, but also understand our nature, because the Lord on His platform can reveal Himself as He is, because as we exist for Him, yatamam prapadanti, He reciprocates with the desire of living beings. So He takes the form by which we had worship Him. And then that's what's interesting in our path. It's not that we reject other paths. We accept them. That's what's interesting. For example, when I was in other paths, we were always rejecting the other paths, like inferior or unreal. They're all wrong except myself, except us. I always saw that everywhere. And even in certain Vaishnav groups, I saw this also. And at the beginning, when I was Vaishnava, I was falling upon, I was meeting so many Vaishnavas who felt like this, you know. But that's like, it's normal, because at the beginning, it's a way to keep our faith to be fanatic. It is clearly explained that we can free ourselves from all fanaticism when we understand others, because we pass through all this phenomenon. We do not come to pure devotion like this. At the beginning, we all have desires. It's an evolution. It's not that like we surrender everything to Krishna at the beginning. We evolve our consciousness. Maybe we're Christian in our previous life, or Buddhist. So we evolve. It's a gradual process. Everyone evolves, no matter where they're coming from. Everyone has a nature. The soul, we don't all have the same eternal nature also, it is explained, as souls, because there are different places that exist eternally in the spiritual world. So, all of this is something we must understand to free ourselves, and also to accept the paths of others. Everyone has the right to be like they want. And this is what is difficult, because in the material world, we have a spirit, a mentality of control. It's extremely difficult not to control others. That's why when someone does not do what we want, that's why we develop frustration, anger. Those are our parents, they already tasted this. Those are our group leaders. As soon as you have a little power, people don't do what you want, then you're up for a wild ride. It's a source of suffering. This is why a Vaishnava, first of all, must be a servant. Someone who serves. Someone who adapts himself constantly. Who learns constantly. Servant means someone is always able to learn all the time. This is a servant. This is devotion. That means every time you free yourself, you can adapt yourself more. It's not like you got liberation and then... No. Liberation means you see this platform where the Lord accompanies all living beings, and you evolve with all living beings. And you evolve. Evolution is liberating. It is positive. It is beautiful. It does not disturb others. It helps everyone. And this is what is important. I was saying, for example, sometimes I post videos on Facebook. It's not that people they really are agree with it. They say, I respect your thought, your thinking, but I don't necessarily agree, but I respect it. It's interesting. I told him, this this is perfection. To respect others, even if we have a different opinion. This is construction. This is evolution. That's where we can harmonize. That's where we go towards a true understanding of things, where we can respect the thoughts of others. Although we think differently, that means we're on the right path. And it is important because everyone has an experience from his previous lives. So if every time you meet someone who does not agree with you and that you want to, try to convert that person, it's not easy. If you see, for example, communism, at the beginning, it's supposed to be a topic, everyone can live together, but what did they do? As soon as someone is different, then they kill him. As soon as someone will be different, because everyone had to think the same way. It's not possible. It's not possible. So we will be in some kind of spiritual communism. Good respect for every living being. This is the way we can build a society. To understand others, to accept their differences, and even materially also, because otherwise we cannot be together. The Republic of France is based on this principle. We have the right to think. We all have the right to think what we want. To a certain level, no? A yellow vest, yeah. To a certain level. The yellow vest movement, there's always a limit, but because when we can free ourselves from the concept of the body, this bodily concept of life, and feel we are the soul, and that the super soul lives within us, then we can understand that everyone is in evolution, is in search of something. And since we're liberated from matter, we are not impregnated by the actions of living beings. Just like the Lord who resides in the heart is not touched by the actions of a living entity. So we are liberated, but at the same time we understand the search of every living being. But we respect because we're in a position where we become associated with the Supreme Lord. And since we're associated with the Supreme Lord, automatically we're protected from falling into illusion in the sense that we're looking for something that is separated from the truth. Like we say, the fruitive activity, for example. Even if someone knows that the Lord is the Lord, he's still separated because he worships the Lord for something else than his truth, for something that is illusory. This is why this action brings fruits. But if you act out of pure love, then it's finished. You're liberated. Thank you very much.